Welcome to Inside CBN Now, where we talk about policies of the Central Bank of Nigeria that affects our daily lives. Whether you're a business owner, a student, or just curious about the economy, we're here to explain the numbers and decisions in a clear and simple way. I am Abiodun Adelore. Access to safe and reliable payment systems is central to Nigeria's growing cashless economy. Many now depend on POS agents for daily transactions, from paying bills to withdrawing or sending money. The central nature of this service makes it important to ensure that the system is safe and transparent. That's why today we are discussing POS Compliance Guidelines. My guest is Mr. Somi Olaniyan, a business analyst, retail strategist, consumer financing and innovation expert with experience in retail, SME, commercial and products. Thank you for joining the discussion.
Thank you very much for having me.
Mr. Olaniyan, why is it important for the CBN to regulate how POS machines are used?
Okay, good question. First, POS terminals are used essentially for financial services, right? And then it's public knowledge that the CBN is the regulator of financial services in Nigeria. So as far as what you are doing in terms of business has to do with financial services, you are generally under the purview of CBN's regulation and supervision. But in more specific terms, it's important there that the integrity of the financial system is protected, right? Because if you look at the numbers, what are POS terminals doing today? If you look at maybe some 10 years ago, you had maybe less than 200,000 POS terminals. If you look at it today, I'm sure we have well over 8 million terminals in the country. In terms of transactions, maybe less than 1 trillion, 2015. Today, you'd be doing maybe 10x of that in a quarter, I tell you, if not even more. In terms of transaction count as well, we're going from maybe like 1 million or less to over 13 billion transactions. And like you said, if you look around you, this is what everybody is depending on today at the last mile for financial transactions. There are a lot of compliance issues around there when it has to do with money. Everybody has to be careful, right? So it's the CBN that we look to for that ultimate level of supervision, and oversight. So I would say that these are the major reasons why the CBN needs to provide that kind of regulatory guidance with respect to using POS terminals.
Thank you very much. Can you outline the most significant rules in the latest guidelines?
Okay, I'll say there are two of them, really, broadly speaking. One of them is the ISO 20022 messaging system, and the other one will be around POS geotagging and geolocation, right? So the first one, I would say, is centered around, it's a global standard, right, for Swift messaging and payments globally, which I believe has a deadline of November this year. Essentially, Swift is how banks globally, move monies and message each other, that kind of thing. So Swift is also trying to retire the empty messaging system for the MX, and that's where the ISO 20022 comes in. This is a critical part of the regulation because it has to do with transmitting data for payments. So from your POS terminal, the location of the merchant, a lot of the information that is passing through in a standardized format to meet that standard. The other part, which is about, I would say the most interesting one that everybody is speaking about, is the geotagging, geolocation, geofencing of POS terminals. And this is where a lot of conversations have really happened, right? What this entails essentially is the CBN has said, wherever you are as a merchant is where your terminal must be in perpetuity. So if you're having a terminal today, that location is geomapped. The coordinates, longitude and latitude of that location is geomapped when the terminal is being activated. And then you can't use that terminal anywhere outside the 10-meter radius, right? So this is the essential part of it. There are a couple of technicalities that you would speak to. PTSPs have to do their certification. You need to use a particular kind of Android operating system 10 and above on those terminals. You must have the SDK as approved by NIPS and things like that. But essentially, the two broad areas, one is for the ISO messaging system, and the second one is the geomapping and geotagging.
Thank you. What problem is the CBN trying to solve with the new POS compliance rules?
That's an interesting one. I think that I would also like to say that there are two regulations that have followed each other very closely. The one for the POS geotagging, geomapping, and the ISO certification came in August, right? And then not long after, in October 6th, CBN released guidelines around agency banking operations. You would agree with me again, if you are familiar with what happens in the streets today, that the agents in different locations that do this agent banking are heavily reliant on POS terminals. Excuse me, for the transactions to be consummated. People go to them with their cards, they do withdrawals and things like that. Now, with respect to your question, I just wanted to bring that additional context into why this other one, also matters. But I would say combating financial crime is one important part of it, in the sense that there's been plenty of fraud. People have reported cases where robbers are moving around with POS terminals. People's cards have been used in different locations that nobody can easily determine, right? Unauthorized use of cards for transactions. That's on the one hand. And on the other hand, like I said earlier, standardization. It's a global standard with respect to the messaging for ISO 20022 as well.
What new standards must POS operators meet before being approved by banks or fintechs?
Okay, operators themselves, they don't. So I'll speak first. Like I said to you, there's the merchant part of the business, right? There's also the agency part of the business. So I would attempt to expand this conversation a little to also touch on the agency part. Now, on the merchant part, the operators don't really need to do anything. The bulk of the work is on the other stakeholders. So the banks, the fintechs, PTSPs, PTSAs, and the central switch, which is NIPS in this case. These are the players who actually have work to do. In terms of the POS operators, they have their terminals, right? Now, the banks, fintechs, the PTSPs have a responsibility of first ensuring that those terminals meet the minimum of Android 10 and above operating systems running on them. They also need to ensure that the SDK as approved by the CBN is what is running on those terminals for them to work. I would say the additional thing that they also need to do now, which maybe some players didn't used to do before, is actual KYC. So because you must tag a particular location where that terminal is working, it means that to deploy a terminal, you must physically visit that location, right? Do a KYC and activate the terminal. Now, from the agency banking side, which is another interesting one, there are a lot of things that operators need to do. There are conversations around, it's a broad conversation, so just summary, conversation around exclusivity, right? You can't be agents to more than one financial institution or principal, things like that. You need to show cause that you don't have criminal records, you must have clean credit reports and things like that. But on the aspect of the operators of POS terminals themselves, they really just need to sit back and wait for the stakeholders to do what is necessary, i.e. the banks, the fintechs, PTSPs, essentially.
Thanks for the insight. Why is it important for every POS device to be linked to an approved service provider?
Well, I would say first, supervision, very clear supervision, right? And to maintain the integrity of what happens in our financial space. You can imagine if you have gone to a merchant to use a POS terminal, and then that POS terminal does not have the direct supervision of maybe the regulator, as approved. You can imagine the kind of problems you have. So you can have issues of your cards being cloned, your information being stolen, and things like that. You can essentially lose money. So there's the part around compliance and supervision. There are also things around reporting. So if we are not routing through these certified guys, you would have a problem with reporting. So today, NIPS and the CBN can give you standard data on the number of POS transactions happening in the industry on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. It will also help them plot trend, and make future plans, you understand, with respect to infrastructure and all of those things. So if you don't have that standard, it's difficult for you to. So that's why these people have been certified, or these entities have been certified, to oversee that space, essentially.
What does the CBN mean by geotagging of POS terminals?
I'll just say it in very simple language. Your terminal has an inbuilt GPS capability, right? What CBN is saying here is that every merchant that is having a POS terminal either new or existing, every POS terminal must be mapped to a location where it can operate. And that terminal cannot function outside the 10-meter radius of that location. So maybe you have a shop, you have a big outlet, a warehouse where you expect to do sales and want to accept payments using a POS terminal. Your financial service provider would activate that terminal in that location. It maps the coordinates, the longitude and latitude, and gives you an allowance of a 10-meter radius within which that terminal can work. Once you step outside that radius, that terminal cannot accept transactions. So this is what geotagging is essentially, mapping the coordinates of where that terminal is going to be used.
What role do payment terminal service providers play under the new CBN guidelines?
A little more work now around certification. So typically what PTSPs do, right, is they are responsible for the deployment, maintenance, and support of terminals. Yes, your banks can give out terminals and your other financial institutions. However, they are like the midpoint. So their expertise is around building applications that the terminals will run on, deploying those terminals, maintaining them, and providing support. So you can imagine if a bank has, or maybe an FI has maybe 1 million terminals out today, what's the possibility that they are able to manage and support those terminals themselves, right? This is not the capabilities that you are expected to build. That's what PTSP stand for. So they have the direct responsibility, right, of running POS terminals, so to speak. So deploying them, building applications to support them, maintaining them. In this case, because it is the applications that the POS terminals run on, they have the responsibility of doing some kind of upgrade, getting certified. The applications have to be certified by the central switch. And then this is what those SDKs will now be deployed on terminals to run. So essentially, everybody is looking to PTSPs. Excuse me. Everybody is looking to PTSPs to get their applications certified, and it's those certified applications that can run POS terminals today.
What does the CBN mean by certified POS terminal, and how is certification done?
Interesting question. So what CBN is saying here is that there are standards, as I had mentioned earlier, right? The messaging standard for payments, for those payments on terminals, the geotagging, geolocation, and how it also works, right? So this is what the certification really means. Certification essentially means that you have to show cause, prove that the application that you have and the terminals that you have in the market today or you deploy going forward meets the minimum requirements set by the CBN. And then certification is done through NIPS. So what the players have had to do, the PTSPs, is by way of step by step. NIPS has a sandbox, right, where you go into request for certification. You upload all the required information, documents as requested by NIPS. They would give you some kind of test credentials. You run them on your application, right? Once that is done, you then wait for NIPS to approve that your application now meets the minimum required standard. Upon that approval is when you get that certificate confirming that you're good to go. So this is essentially what certification means, and these are the steps.
What sanctions can the CBN place on banks or companies that fail to meet POS compliance standards?
Kathy, I'm smiling, because I've been in banking for a while. The CBN is the CBN. Really, I don't know for a fact that I've seen very clear sanctions here written out for the agency banking one. Like I said earlier, yes, the circular came out with very clear sanctions. Sanctions can be as high as maybe 5 million naira compounding on a daily basis. Board members of a bank, for instance, can be suspended. Chief compliance officers can be sanctioned. It might even be as grave as the bank even losing their ability to run that part of the business. For the CBN, as long as compliance is concerned, I mean, the fines and penalties can be really, really enormous. Even beyond financial, there can be non-financial penalties that will have grave impacts on the system. And that's with respect to erring institutions.
It's time for Now Streetwise, where we go out into the street to find out what Nigerians think about the CBN and its responsibilities.
Which one do you prefer, POS or ATMs?
I prefer POS.
because I feel it's more easier. You can easily locate a POS agent than going to the ATM. So I prefer the POS.
ATM, because my ATM, I can take it wherever I like, and POS is not everywhere. You understand? POS is not everywhere. My ATM, the charges for the ATM is different from the charges from POS, and it's better. POS get charges. You understand? Because maybe there is no ATM close by. That's why there is POS. So that's it.
I would prefer ATM because when you look at POS, there are times when you do transaction on POS, the POS the transaction will not go, and it's on the move. Many times you see on the move transaction, it can reflect back, and it will cause some transaction that will not make you happy. So when you go to POS, when you go to ATM, when you have a bad transaction on your ATM, you can easily walk inside the bank and rectify it. So I would prefer ATM than to POS.
I prefer POX because the reason why I prefer POX is this. Whenever I go to POX, they always give me money. They will not tell me story that there is no money on it. And secondly, whenever I give them my card, whenever I finish, they not return my card. But POS sometimes they swallow my card and I will go back. I will just go back home with pain. That's the reason why I want POX. Yeah, ATM normally swallow my card.
Have you ever lost money in a failed POS transaction? Did you get to resolve it?
Once in a while, you make transaction on POS and you'll be like, they just will tell you that I've not confirmed the money. So you just have to come with the agent. So it might probably be the network issue or bad connection. So that does it. But I've never lost money on it.
Well, so I did lose money, but I didn't resolve it because the POS was trying to say she didn't see the money or stuff like that. Like a day, the second day, the third day, so continuous like that. So I have to leave it, let it go. I went to the bank, the transaction went through, but she said she did not see it. So I had to let it go.
Yes, I've lost money, but not too much money like that. But when there is a problem in POS, they will have to tell me that I should come back in the next 24 hours. Maybe it will bounce back, and definitely they will refund the money back.
What happened that there is a time that I went to POX, so I tried to withdraw money through POX. They now debit me. They now asked me that I should go to my bank. So I now went to my bank. They asked me that I should wait for 24 hours, that I will get my money back. And I wait for 24 hours later and I get my money back. That is why I prefer the POX.
Has your POS agent ever charged you higher than usual?
Yes, now. That is normal for Nigeria. They go charge you, go price them. So it's normal thing. Maybe when they are taking, okay, normal, everybody knows that 5,000 is 100 naira charges. But sometimes they might charge you 200. So you just have to let them know that this is the normal charge for POS.
My POS in my street, she don't charge me higher than usual, but that will be maybe I went somewhere else and this is what I collect. Maybe maybe for 5k they say on them 200, and I will be like, my own place is 100 naira, and because that's not why I used to do it normally, I have to do it because that's what they charge there.
Actually, I've not lodged big amounts with POS. What I do is maybe if I want to lodge big amount like 100,000, I walk up to bank and lodge it there. But lesser amounts, less than 100,000, I can easily do with POS.
When I meet POX, they normally charge me in a good price. So they didn't charge me in high price.
Are you aware of the new CBN guidelines for POS operators?
No, I'm not.
No, I don't.
I've not come across that.
Yeah, I know about it. I have heard it. So the thing is that, everybody with their own business. So CBN is trying for them to meet up to their own customers, inconvenience their customers. So that's all about it.
Welcome back from Now Streetwise. Mr. Laniyo, what are your thoughts on Nigerians from Now Streetwise?
Okay, so what's interesting? Like I said earlier, the POS conversation is in two folds. There's the merchant side of things, and then there's the agency side of things. What you'll find most people speak about on the streets today is the agency side of things, because this is what has made POS terminals quite popular in Nigeria today. Now, what I mean by the merchant side of things is when you go to a supermarket or you go to a store and you want to pay for goods or services, you make that payment to a merchant on a merchant POS terminal. Now, with respect to how people see it, right, I believe that the agency banking business has really brought relief to a lot of people. It's helped financial inclusion, it's made access to funds a lot more easier. And this is, like I said, it's a very popular use of POS terminals today. How people see it is that it's more readily available. As someone has said, I don't have to go past my street to withdraw money. In the past, I'd have to go to a bank's ATM, make long queues, and all of those things, go through stress in the banking hall to withdraw money. But with the POS agents, right, I can easily just go there to do my withdrawal, and it's something that people find very interesting. Another concept that jumped at me when I heard that feedback is that maybe people tend to be a little more patient with the POS agents than they are with banks. So you hear the man saying, well, if I'm doing a transaction and the thing has failed, and the man said this transaction it has failed or is not working at the moment, I have to exercise patience and wait for him. Because there's a higher level of trust. The people who operate these terminals are people they know from within the community. People they know that they can easily, go to and find if there are issues. So there's a higher trust level compared to when they go into the banking hall where they meet people all dressed up in suit and tie, and they feel that there's a wide gap. There's some kind of closer connection, and want that they feel operating with POS agents. Well, in respect to the charges or costing, I think that many people argue against this. Somebody there was saying that he negotiates. Some people would say to you that it's just convenience fee. Instead of having to go to the bank, taking the transport all the way to the bank and going through the stress, somebody has brought that level of convenience to you. So I think that the nuances are different. The only other thing that I believe has changed again in recent times for the POS agents is the fact that there's now a daily limit set on the transactions that they can do. And people on the street, of course, will confirm to you that affects. So the maximum a POS agent can do today in a day is 1.2 million naira. So you can imagine a POS agent in a high density area. It means if that man exhausts transactions up to 1.2 million within the first 4 hours of the day, he maybe can't serve any other customer that day again. So yes, in terms of convenience, these are things people enjoy with POS agents. In terms of challenges with the new regulations, some of the things people will struggle with, as well as the fact that you need to now obtain additional information as a POS agent to do customers' transactions because of the KYC part of things, to also stay safe and then reduce cases of fraud.
How does this guideline help protect customers from being defrauded during POS transactions?
A couple of things. First, because somebody who has taken your money today, even if the transaction fails, can't just up and disappear tomorrow, because the bank has ample information about that person, or whatever FI that has deployed that terminal has a high level of information about that person, where to find them. You, as a customer who has used that location, knows where to find them, right? That's one. Number two, if somebody's card, if there's an unauthorized transaction has happened, you are also able to locate where this has happened and find them. So in the past, people will say to you that some POS agents or merchants use their POS for normal transactions during the day, and they hand it over to maybe fraudsters or robbers at night to go and operate with. With this new regulation, that can happen, because that terminal will not work outside the already geotagged location because of the geofencing capability. I think this is an area where people are going to be a lot more comfortable, where it helps to reduce incidences or cases of fraud. And also the agents know that they are not ghosts, they can be found.
Thanks for the insight. How are those rules expected to make POS operations more transparent and traceable?
Traceable, first, with respect to the ISO 20022 messaging system, it means that you get a lot more information per transaction. The kind of messaging that is going into every transaction done also includes the coordinates. So you can tell at every point in time where this transaction was consummated, right? So it helps with respect to tracing. For tracing, because you also know the particular location, you can find that location where that transaction was done. Is also very, very useful, right? It also makes it a lot more transparent. So there's nothing shrouded in secrecy. If I go to my bank tomorrow morning and report that, my card was used last night at 10 p.m. or I didn't know my card went missing and the transaction was done. In the past, you now have to start searching who owns this terminal. Oh, this FI deployed this terminal. How do we find this terminal? can we get additional information to the extent of where this was done? It's a lot quicker now. So you can imagine if your child picks your card, or somebody living in your house picks your card and goes to your junction to go and do a withdrawal. Just with that information of that withdrawal, real time, you can be informed that this withdrawal happened at this junction at this time. So yes, it also helps a lot.
How will these POS compliance guidelines impact fintech companies and traditional banks in terms of innovation and competition?
Thank you very much. Interesting question again for this. And I'll say to you that there are a couple of dimensions to this. It's a question I'll very much enjoy discussing. So first, if you look at the way the banks operate and the fintechs, right, and all your FIs are able to deploy POS terminals today, there's a financial implication. Now, the CBN guideline is very clear. It says that your terminals must be Android 10 and above operating system. A lot of terminals in the industry today are maybe versions lower than that. So the discussion around the industry is that practically everybody has to go and buy new terminals. So we're talking about millions of new terminals having to come into the industry. And if you look at what the cost of terminals are today, that's in billions for this to happen, right? So there's a huge financial implication. Other point is, if everybody's going to bring in brand new terminals, replacing the existing terminals in the industry, over 8 million of them or thereabouts, what happens to these old terminals? Because they're obviously not useful anywhere else. Some of these terminals people have invested in buying just recently. So what happens to them? They become completely useless, which is another challenge for a lot of people, right, in the industry, for practically everybody in the industry. Beyond that, how quickly can we replace all these terminals? So imagine that you have 1.5 million active terminals running today. You need a very, very strong distribution channel, right, to be able to replace these terminals. Remember again that there's a location activation process that also needs to happen. So plenty of manpower needs to go into that. A lot of KYC needs to go into that. So it's a lot of work in that aspect. But beyond that, there's also operational challenges. So today, a lot of people who do deliveries, who will allow you pay upon delivery, their delivery men are coming with physical terminals to you to do transactions. The question now is, what happens when each terminal has to be geotagged or geomapped, right? This is another very important discussion that needs to be had. There are some kind of external devices that you can connect to phones and all of that for acceptance of payments. But again, the question is, are these going? There are also MPOS terminals, but the question remains, how do we treat maybe an application running on your phone accepting payments? So there are contactless payment options today, and there's something called, you can use NFC, that's near field communication to NFC enabled kind of payments, the contactless, just tap to pay, right? The question then is, if I'm using NFC for acceptance, contactless payments with a mobile application on my phone, how do we treat this? Are these POS terminals that need to also be geotagged or geomapped? These are some of the conversations that are happening from an innovation perspective. Also, there are a couple of other payment options, real-time payment options that are available today. It remains for everybody to see how well they can incorporate these innovative methods of accepting payments, sidestepping your standard POS terminals for people who are mobile and always on the go.
Thanks for joining the discussion.
Thank you.
My guest is Mr. Somi Olanio, and we've been discussing POS compliance guidelines. Before we come to the end of today's program, here is a quiz for you. What does the CBN mean by geotagging of POS terminals? What does the CBN mean by geotagging of POS terminals? Send your answers starting with Inside CBN Now to WhatsApp number 0809 682 2595. 0809 682 2595. The first correct answer gets a prize. Thanks for being part of the program today. Until next time, I am Abiodun Adilowore.